Well, how did I get started? Actually, I had been a conscientious objector, but one thing that happened when I came to the Bay Area in 1966 to San Francisco, and then in '67 I started working with a guy, a couple people who were putting out one of the early GI-oriented papers, newspapers, and they were civilians. But I started working with them, and I started trying to distribute the papers, and it seemed like a really good idea, because at that time a lot of the anti-war movement didn't seem too tuned into the idea that, look, we better orient ourselves toward GIs. We better kind of make allies with them, you know, make an alliance with them, help them, particularly the ones that are questioning the war or maybe even actively resisting. And this was starting to take hold, but I started trying to pass out the paper at the service clubs and the bases around. And this was 1967, and I was 21, just turning 21. And that went well in some ways, and then I would read the paper, of course, and the paper was talking about these people who were in the military doing, you know, refusing to, the Fort Hood 3, they refused to fight, or the Fort Hood 43 refused to go do riot duty in Chicago. That was in 1968. And then there was Howard Levy, and he refused to train the Green Berets, and there were all these people, and then there were just some people whose names didn't become so well known that I read about, and I started thinking, well, this would really be the best thing to do to try to organize against it. And I said, hell no, I'm not going to do this. I'm out, you know, I don't have to go, I'm out, I'm not going to go. And so I was scared of trying to go in there. But by 1969, I was with a political group that was trying to start doing this, and there was one guy who had gotten out and who had been doing this, and so I said, okay. So I said, yeah, okay, this makes sense. I'll do this. And it also helped to have a group of people that were kind of meeting together and thinking about it and trying to figure out a way to do this. So I went in and did it, and I spent 2 years in there in the Army, just like people do that are drafted. But and it, you know, I went through what other people went through, and in some respects. But I always tried to hold on to that thing that I've got to keep resisting. Otherwise, I'm gonna feel bad. And I've got the tools to do it. I know where to get the information, and I know enough information about the war, and I can talk to people, and I have the commitment to do this. And I can, you know, and I'm older. I'm a little older. I'm 23 when I go in. So this helps because people were so young. People were 18 and 19. The people I was in Vietnam with on those armored vehicles, the average age was 19. That's what they said the average age was. And most of those guys were 19, and they were young. And it's real different to come from a small town, maybe even a farm or some. You know, some people were from farms, and not have any exposure to, say, the protests in college, which I had, or the anti-war movement out here, and to work a little and to have a job and to be on your own, and to, you know, I had that, and that really helped me a lot to be in that position. So I didn't get really swamped by it. And I was also lucky because the combat I was in was very light, and they sent me back after 4 months in Vietnam for having the newspapers and passing them out. So the other times back in the States, I got put in jail for it, but here I got lucky and got sent back. And that was good for me. Of course, other people didn't get sent back, but...
That's ironic, that time being sent back was...
Well, they were, I mean, you have to realize that it was a situation where the rebellion was getting bigger. I mean, people in the infantry, now I was in the armored, but people in the infantry, when they go out on patrols, they would, a lot of times they'd go out 50 yards and light up a joint, and their whole little squad would say, oh yeah, we're out here on the position. Well, they didn't know where they were just radioing in, and people did this routinely. And they burned down both the military stockades in the same month, in August '68, when a lot of rebellion happened, the big Chicago riots, and Prague and Czechoslovakia and Mexico City and France and the Cultural Revolution in China. Everything, the world was in revolt. Well, in Long Binh jail, the army GIs burned down a section of that stockade, and the Da Nang brig and the Marine brig in Da Nang, a section of that was burned down same month. So this was, you know, this was an army in revolt, and a lot of times people who were refused to fight were instead of being court-martialed, were sent back to other companies just in the rear. You know, this started happening certainly by '69. It started happening when I went in the Army, and then I was there in 1970, and it was starting to happen even more. So I was in a gung-ho unit apparently, but I could see the things shift even while I was there. I could see people were getting pissed off, and the people that died while I was there, they died for no reason. I mean, we were in Cambodia, and 4 people were killed. We were supposed to have left this night defensive perimeter, like a fire base where a whole squadron was, you know, 500 people, and we were supposed to have left at 7 in the morning, and we were lined up on the road at 7 in the morning, and the other platoon in my troop, like a company, a troop, was forced to pick up the brass on this perimeter by this general who had come out to make a name for himself. He wasn't even attached to the unit. He wasn't even attached to the regiment, and he came out and ordered all these guys to pick up brass until 2 in the afternoon, and then these rounds came in and killed 4 of them.
Pick up brass? You mean
pick up brass casing? Pick up brass casings.
Why?
Well, I'm guessing this guy was not an ecology freak. I mean, he was saying, oh, well, we can't let the Viet Cong get a hold of this and melt it down or something. I don't know. I think he was just, most of these guys were pretty nuts. I mean, the night before, he had tried to pick up a armored cavalry assault vehicle with a Chinook helicopter, which everybody said, you shouldn't do that. That's crazy. So it came crashing down. That was what he did the night before. And I'm sure he got a Silver Star just for being there and doing stupid things. But anyway, these 4 people were killed in my troop, and one of them I had just gotten there. I went one of them, and 7 others were dusted off, seriously wounded and taken off by helicopter. And those were 4 out of the 5 people that were killed in the 3 months I was in combat there. And you know, the 5th one was because we had been attacked 3 days before that, and a mortar attack at night, but they didn't move the position. If we were attacked, it meant our position was zeroed in. So you move. They didn't move, and not only that, we were supposed to move. We didn't move at 7 in the morning. We were lined up there at 7 in the morning, but the other platoon was out there picking up this stuff. So that's the 5 people that were killed. I was lucky. Many of the people in Vets for Peace here were in situations where many more people were killed, and they killed people. You know, I probably didn't. You know, although I didn't try to aim very well, and I fired rounds in mad minutes at 2 o'clock in the morning, but I didn't see anybody. So I tried not to participate as much as I could in the war effort, and also tried not to put the people I was with in jeopardy. So that was maybe a little tricky part of it, you know, because you're trying to do both things. And but there were things I would have refused to do, and I didn't get to that point where I had to refuse to do them, which was good for me, which was lucky for me. But lots of people that were there in the war earlier many of them were in way worse. Just there's no comparison. Worse situations. The Ashall Valley up north in '66, just carnage, you know. So by the time I had gotten there, there was the army who was already much more in revolt than it had been. When I was in the Fort Lewis Stockade, I mean, we had a whole community of resistors in there. I was in there for 2 months for distributing literature. But it was actually a good place for me to be because there were people in there. It was an overseas replacement station, so people in there, more people went out of Oakland, but some people went out of Fort Lewis, and they had overseas orders, so some people refused to go from there. So they were maybe political refusers, and they were in the stockade, so they were part of our community. And then there was another guy in there for distributing the underground paper that was on base. They had an underground paper, and they had a coffee house there by Fort Lewis. So it was a good place for me actually to kind of sort of get really with some rebellious people, because I'd just been in basic and AIT and infantry, and I knew the ideas, but I actually wanted to be around more rebellious people. So it was actually a sort of another training for me, which served me well. And thank you.